Like always, have a great guest today, our orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist, Dr. Grant Garcia. Dr. Garcia, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me. I wish the weather was better, but it's good to be here.
Listen, I know you could fix bones and you could do all this miracle work here and get people walking and reattaching limbs and everything else. If you can fix the weather here, we're going to have a different type of show. So if you could do that, just let me know, because we're gonna have to go on Jimmy Fallon. We're gonna do a bunch of different things. So that'll be quite interesting if you could do that.
That would be a nice skill.
Dr. Garcia, listen. It's crazy. It's almost Thanksgiving. We're talking basketball today for this show, and we're about to have the NBA draft, not in July, but right before Thanksgiving. As a sports fan, it's a little mind-boggling. Just, can you wrap your head around the fact that we're now finally about to have an NBA draft, and in a few weeks they're going to be back at camp?
It's mind-boggling. I mean, we feel like we just finished the NBA, and now we're talking about it again. And it's now front and center. You know, all the articles on ESPN are about the draft choices, who's number one, who's going to go number two, the backstories. And usually we get a break from that between the championships and now, and we're seeing it much sooner. I guess it's also good because we need some sports in our lives with all the hectic stuff going on. So I do appreciate the extra information and kind of keeping us sane.
Okay, so let's play GM or let's play team doctor as we kind of go into this draft. You've worked with the Bulls. You've had affiliation with the Knicks, with the Nets. When it comes down to dealing with these high-level athletes and you're getting ready, if you're a team doctor and you're getting ready to evaluate some of these players, what are some of the things that you look for before we get into concerns?
So I think the first thing is sort of the background. So the background is usually a lot of this stuff happens earlier on. We use it at the combine. NBA combine's not nearly as well published as the NFL, but it's sort of the same type of thing. Every player gets extensive physicals at the combine. They usually have a lot of team doctors fly in for that. Most of the head team doctors and generally some other people that work assistants as well. And every player in there gets a extensive physical from head to toe. They usually get full x-rays. Any part of the body that they're concerned about at any time, they just pull the trigger and get an x-ray there. If they've ever had a surgery done, any surgery that's extensive, they get an MRI. And these are high-performance players, such as high-performance vehicles, and you want to make sure you check everything, committing a large amount of money and time to these players. And so you have all that information going into that. And if needed, they'll do a secondary opinion to further evaluate the player so you can see how much goes into this. I mean, we're not talking about NBA per se with this example, but Tua for the Dolphins, we all know about his hip fracture dislocation. Dr. Bird in Tennessee is actually having to see him as a secondary opinion to see whether his blood supply in the hip was still good before the Dolphins drafted him at number 5. And so those are all extremely important. And then they're going to grade each player on a scale, usually A, B, C, D, to defend. So these are important. You can see all the things go into this. And I won't go extensively into it, but this is this behind the scenes stuff that we never get to see is happening all the time in the medical field for the professional sports. And NBA is not alone.
Yeah, you talk about the combine and the draft process and everything that's happened this year. The in-person meetings were not the same this year, right? Which was the medical, the evaluation, the workouts. They had a window which was about a month, right? I think it was October 16th through November 16th, where teams could have up to 2 visits per player and no more than 10 total among the prospects. By having these limitations, right? What does that do to the team doctors or anyone evaluating these players? How does that hamper them compared to other years?
I think it severely hampers them. I mean, it's like asking me to do a physical exam on a player remotely. I mean, I can't put my hands on them. I can't feel whether, I know they had an ACL done. They did really well, the previous season in college. But now I can't actually feel that ACL and see, does this feel good to me? Am I worried? Do I have to get more imaging on it? And so that I think that's going to affect some things. And I think for the players that are more injury prone, have had more surgeries, it'll probably benefit them because some of their smaller things will sneak through the cracks. And so that might be a little less adjustment if you had a previous injury. But I do think it's going to affect things, and it's a really important point to bring up. And you're talking about, the top players are the ones that are getting brought in, but, there's a lot of draft picks that are used, that are picked, and those players in the bottom that normally would be evaluated at the combine are not happening this year.
One of the guys, just segue to the guys that might get picked toward the bottom of the draft right here in the state of Washington going to Gonzaga is Killian Tilly. Right. And I'm not sure how much college basketball you follow. And if you follow Gonzaga, the last 4 years, 6'10", 220, big kid, missed 38 games in college. And he's had an injury pretty much every year. The freshman year, he had a broken finger. It is what it is. Sophomore year, he had a hip pointer, right? A junior year, ankle stress fracture. He was out for 8 weeks. He played 9 games and then tore his plantar fasciitis and then missed another 4 weeks. And then his senior year, he had surgery to clean up his knee, and he had an ankle sprain. I mean, a guy like this that at one point, I think after his freshman year, you could have, if you would have came out in the draft, he might have been a top 10 pick. Now you start to see these things on a man that size, 6'10", 220. If you're evaluating him just on the past 4 years as injuries, what would be your concern if you had to make a pick of a player like that?
I'm worried about, the track record. I mean, the number of injuries is concerning. The stress fracture to me is a little less concerning. Obviously, NBA players are a different breed. I mean, we have NFL hard-hitting, large players, but they're not the height of these players, and that's where the big stuff comes in. Usually lower extremities, so we talk about ankle, foot, and the knee. Of those things you mentioned to me, the one that concerns me the most is his plantar fascia, because the feet tend to be a really big problem. In general, surgery on the feet tends to be a slower recovery, those type of things, and the blood supply is just different. You're talking about a giant person. You said 6'10", so that takes even longer for it to get to him, no matter how active and athletic he is. I mean, you remember Yao Ming, there's a number of players who've had foot issues that have essentially been completely incapacitated from their injury and can't get better, no matter how good of a, whether Bob Anderson is the one that does the surgery or no one, but it's a big deal, and that's what I worry about the most with a player like that. And, there's other things involved in their body parts we want to about, but the feet is really what I'm concerned, especially with a rupture of that sort. That predisposes to other things as well.
So is that a particular injury, or is it just for big man, or just in general? Because I guess they're all big, right? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, we look at Steph Curry; he looks tiny, and he walks in the room. He's what, 6'3", 6'4", or something like that.
That's
by far
above average for the average person you meet.
Yeah, exactly. But on the court, he looks tiny next to everybody else is running around. Is that one of the injuries that really concerns you for a basketball player? Is it the foot? Is it the knee? What are the injuries that really concern you going forward with a basketball player, especially a young basketball player that's already showing signs of it, with his NBA career about to happen, as he gets drafted?
A basketball player is sort of a nuance in and of itself, because each sport has its own injuries we worry about. With basketball, the fifth metatarsal, that's the fracture on the side of the foot. I saw a few of those when we were at HSS and dealing with some of the Nets players. But if those break, they tend to turn into non-unions, and they can be a big deal in these large players that have bones. Their foot bones are the size of someone's normal person's hand. And so, in the amount of force they're putting on it, it takes a while for them to heal if they're broken. So those are ones that we're really concerned about. I always get worried about when they say the word knee cleanup, because I see a lot of NFL and other players that have had a knee cleanup, which means that they've had, all the meniscus taken out, clean up of the cartilage, and they actually have a knee that looks like it's 50 when they're really, not even 20 yet. And so you want to be careful when we dive into these things. We need to know all this information. So, if I'm a player, I'm a NFL or NBA doctor evaluating this, I'm looking at the operative reports. I'm asking for images. I'm always getting new MRIs on somebody like that to really see what the cartilage looks like. Because, stress fractures, they heal. Those are pretty easy to identify, healed or not healed. Cartilage damage and those type of things that can cause long-term issues and slow the player down or hurt their sort of explosiveness at that size are incredibly important.
It's funny. It's a cute little terminology when you say knee cleanup. It just sounds like, you just got like a little handy vac and just kind of just went in there and just kind of cleaned up the little bit of a mess. So it's funny when you say something, like that. Oh, it's just a little knee cleanup, it's not a big deal. Are there any concerns when an agent is kind of giving a team to run around? We know the agent's role there is to, protect his client, to put his client in the best position to make some money and succeed and get with an organization, if he's that talented, to get an organization of his choice, if he can manipulate a little bit. But if an agent is kind of steering the way as far as the information, we had our doctors look at him, these are our results, and just kind of passing that information along without you getting a chance to get your hands on that player, especially in a year like this where they're limiting you to 10 players to evaluate. What are some of the concerns with that?
Well, it's real, and it happens all the time. I mean, I've done a few of these NFL ones as a second opinion as an outsider. They want to get your information, and they'll get like 7 opinions on these bigger players with the larger contracts to make sure they feel comfortable in going in and what they're negotiating too. They want the 6 other opinions to be like, okay, this person's going to have, 5 more years in them, 7 more years in them. So they get that big contract, and then they get that 20% cut or whatever they get. So they're definitely in their client's interest, and they'll try whatever it takes to try to get enough evidence to help their case. It's similar to a lawyer in a negotiation. So they're very crafty at that, and they know a lot of people. You're a doctor, you're a team doctor. You want to know these agents because they're the ones who are going to call you for the second opinion when they need something. Where I work in Chicago, we had Brian Cole is one of the best cartilage doctors in the country, and if not the world. And we had these all the time coming in for second opinion, under the radar evaluations. How long is it going to be? Does he need surgery? Those type of things, and they can get all that information ahead of time before they see the team doctor, so they can either be ready to address it or how to argue against it and saying, listen, this player's actually worth the extra couple $1 million you're going to put into it. It's a big market.
It's absolutely incredible. Is there ever anything that kind of sticks out for you when you have an agent or something along those lines that kind of stands out when they say certain things that you're like, wait a minute, something doesn't vibe. There's something more here than what we're being led on to.
Yeah, I mean, it's more the language and understanding what they're saying. I mean, you have to see the images and then ask them the questions. And I think that's really what the hardest part is, because, we all say, okay, well, why can't the doctors figure this all out? Well, you're talking about hundreds of players. I mean, even the players in the top 30, top 60, that's 60 players. That's a lot. I mean, for me to evaluate that many players, that would take a long time. I mean, these players aren't your normal visit where it's a 10-minute visit. I mean, every NBA, NFL person I see just in my standard office is an extra 45 to an hour. It's a totally different animal than the average visit that we do. And so you imagine how much effort's going into this. And so things can get missed, and you don't want them to, but that's why we have checklists and everything else. But there's little nuances you can talk to the agent about, like, they'll try to write it off or dismiss it and say, we've got that check already. It's fine. Got the imaging. I've got a note that shows this. No, I want to see it myself. And so that's the biggest issue. And, we're all doctors and we're all human, and, everyone's got a difference of opinion. I mean, what to do with a cartilage defect or a broken foot in somebody is not the same answer for every single doctor, no matter how easy it may seem. Like we talked about this before with Saquon Barkley or other players. I mean, they may get 10 opinions, and in some cases you'll get 5 different options. And so you got to be careful of that as well.
The last 2 years we've had players with injury concerns. We'll go back 2 years ago. I guess we're about to start the third year now with Michael Porter Jr. He had that microdiscectomy of his L3, L4 spinal disc. I call it the Tiger Woods surgery. That's the best way that I can think of it.
Yeah.
It's the same surgery that Tiger Woods had. And his stock dropped, right? I mean, he still got selected. I believe it was the top 15, I think, where Denver took him. But he should have been a top 3, top 5 player at the time. When you see an athlete like that relies on his skill, the way he jumps, I had the pleasure of seeing him when he was still playing here at Nathan Hale before he left. And he's kind of one of these high flyer guys. What would be some of the concerns when you had a player come in like that and say, what's going to be his durability?
I get worried about anytime you take a disc out, you're losing height of that disc, and you have a chance of having some type of nerve issue. Again, it's the way it works for the lumbar spine is you damage or have reduced stability of one part of it, it can aggravate the next parts of it. And lumbar spine, when we start getting into neuro stuff like that, is definitely concerning for a player. You want them to be at highest possible potential, and lower back pain can be a big problem for these large players. And so that's definitely a concern. It's a lot, and microdisc, even though it's a relatively quick surgery, it's a big deal. Remember, it's obviously a different animal, but Peyton Manning had this cervical spine surgery, and he did win a Super Bowl with it, but he had no feeling in his triceps. And so that's a big deal.
That's crazy.
These guys are very physical. They have to be at top notch. And so if any type of nerve issue, that'll put them, it's really hard to come back from a nerve issue. It's a lot different than an ACL or a cartilage thing. We can fix them. We can't really fix it if nerve damage has occurred or if it's occurring currently.
So do you think, and this is not a fair question, so I'm going to lay it out like that.
Okay with that.
But do you think he's having maybe some feeling issues or nerve issues when you're kind of getting down there into your spine and kind of messing around? Do you think whether he's having some now or might be a concern later on, especially, I guess, if you're a team and eventually he's going to become a free agent once he's done with his rookie deal? Is that something that would concern you as a team doctor and saying, yeah, he's playing well now, but with a surgery like this, you might be concerned, 4 or 5 years down the road from his new contract?
I'm not as much on this one. I'm always concerned, but you have players like Javaris Clowney had a terrible knee injury and a cartilage damage and had to have a cartilage procedure done, and everyone still wants to play with him, even despite a couple injuries he's had. So you have to think about this. There's always a risk-benefit analysis, right? And that's why some of these contracts are 1 year, 2 years. They want to see how they do. Evaluate a few players in the NFL that eventually got contracts, but the contracts weren't, because they had some pretty bad cartilage stuff, and the contracts aren't 5-10 years. They're different. And so that's how they structure the contract for them. But, they're also going to just do pack performance. For a draft pick, it's a different animal. For someone that's had 3 or 4 years in the NBA and done really well, there's no reason to think that he would have a problem in 2 more years. And it's a pretty safe contract. If they're going to offer him a long-term guarantee, that's a different animal. So I think that's also the thing. And there's numbers guys in some of these mathematicians basically in these franchises that'll calculate the risk-benefit ratio, what the player is per day, of how much we need to pay them and everything else, and to find the best possible contract that benefits the team or benefits the organization. And so that's important. But we get down nitty gritty, it's still a human making this decision, and we have to do our gut instinct because we don't have enough of these to use for examples all the time, right? Because there's players that all the time that come back from crazy injuries that end up being amazing, and we can't even explain it.
Yeah, I guess to oversimplify it is, I guess, the risk reward, right? I mean, if you're taking a chance on Killian Tilly, late in the second round, it's easier to take that chance than going and reaching for him as a top 5 pick, where there's going to be money and obviously the investment on a pick like that may not pan out. So I guess you have to evaluate those type of things. Zion Williamson, right? This phenom, this freak of an athlete, and I say that with the utmost respect. Are you concerned about his future, especially he's had, the image from when he ripped his sneaker when he was playing at Duke and he had the knee sprain. He had the right knee meniscus, which I believe kept him out about 4 months. Mm-hmm. If I'm correct. Came back to the bubble. He kind of left, came back, didn't play. I know Bill Simmons back in February mentioned that they thought that he was pushing, 3 plus instead of the 285 at 6'6" that they have him listed at. What are some of your concerns or not about a player as talented as Zion?
Well, I think we heard it from the beginning, from the draft. I mean, his athleticism is unparalleled.
Ridiculous.
Any player that's ever played.
It's ridiculous.
Any player that's ever played in the NBA. His height, strength, and everything else are unparalleled. He does physiological things that no human should be able to do. And so right there is a positive, right? That's why he got drafted so high.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody loves watching him or gets excited when he comes to game day. But with that comes a risk of injury. These smaller players that are more agile, they can handle it. But if he's really pushing 220 pounds more than his normal weight, and he's already had 2 small injury scares, and those are small injuries in comparison to what others happen. But there's underlying issues that occur there as well that we don't know about. You guys aren't hearing that his whole meniscus had to be taken out. I'm not saying that's the case.
Yeah.
But, there's a whole other animal. Like I said, it's the example of a knee cleanup. What does a knee cleanup mean? I've seen players that said they had their knee cleaned up by James Andrews 2 years ago, and meanwhile it was basically half their cartilage blown off and their meniscus taken out. I mean, that's a much bigger deal than a little trim. And so you got to be careful on even information that we're getting as to how accurate it is or what does it actually mean. Because, for the layman person, that's not really something they understand or even want to question further. But for someone of his size, I am very concerned. But you also take him for what he is. He's a fantastic player, and you don't want to pass on him. And I think that if he can be smart about it and to limit his games, limit his playing time, and use him as more of like a 70-30 guy rather than all the time player to keep his longevity, to keep his productivity up. And I think that they will. I mean, the problem you have is you never know when to let him back either, right? Because they're not a normal human. In your normal practice, you let someone go play basketball after mastectomy in 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe not for a guy that's his size and his speed, because he's going to push through it, and he could overpower it.
If you're the team doctor for the Pelicans, that's something that you have to really kind of be spot on, right? I mean, I could just imagine the pressure, that role has with the team, because you're a part of that investment. And I just wonder how much teams and coaches rely on the information, the critical information that the team doctors provide, and say, hey, the kid could go out there and play tonight, but we want to take care of X, Y, and Z. How important is that role of the doctor, and hopefully how the franchise is listening to him?
It's very important. I mean, that's why they have them. They have them there as consultants, and I think it depends on the doctor. The ones that are really experienced, have been on multiple teams, like Brian Cole, who's, world renowned. He has a different reputation. When he says stuff, you don't do anything other than what he said, kind of thing. And there's other doctors that are a little newer, and they'll get other opinions if they have to get more, confirmation. It's all about how the team trusts you. And so that's the most important thing. And that's really that's where the rubber meets the road. But, they're still trained and everything else to evaluate these players too and say, okay, I feel like they're ready. Because, in our jobs, in his team position, we want to make recommendations, but we also need to know from the trainers, what do you think? Because, the player's going to come in, you're going to see them that one time in the training room. You're not going to really know if they're really hurt or how they're playing unless they've been seen by the trainer who sees them every single day, right, on the field, et cetera. We can only be there so much because we have our normal daily jobs we have to tend to do as well. And so you got to use a whole plethora of information, and usually they'll make the right decision. But, unfortunately, when it's the wrong decision, it's put on the team doctor. When it's the right decision, it's not always the credit given to the team doctor either. So it's a job that requires a special set of skills and a special personality to be able to do as well. It's not easy.
It sounds like when fans are ranting and raving about the Mets doctors, not so much the last couple of years, but there was a stretch when it just seemed like the Mets doctors were just getting, lambasted over what they thought was their decision making with some of these players, and the way the New York Mets players were constantly getting hurt. You kind of point the finger at them, but they don't get any of the credit when they're on the field all the time. So it's an interesting point that you're making there.
I would agree more, and bring up the Mets. I mean, I know most of those guys from working with them and working with the Mets. These are some of the top doctors in the whole country, if not world, working at one of the best hospitals in the world at special surgery. And the credit they're getting is that they get lambasted for some of the decisions they make. Meanwhile, these are the same doctors, the head doctors, David Olczyk, who everybody flies in from anywhere around the world to have their Tommy John done with. It's kind of interesting if you extrapolate it out. There's way more to the information than just a medical decision. You don't know what the management did, and sometimes they go against the doctors. They don't always do it, but sometimes they make the call. They say, listen, no.
Yeah, it's funny, but don't listen to us, us fans, because we kind of blow with the wind. Fans, you get a win tonight. Life is good. There's sunshine and rainbows today, and then they lose, and then it's everybody's losing their mind, and you need to fire everybody. So it's really difficult when you get teams and franchises spending too much time on social media, listening or reading the things that the fans are kind of losing their mind. But kudos to all my Mets friends back there. They've got Stevie Cohen with all his billions, and there's not a fan base that's more excited about the upcoming season than the New York Mets fans. Dr. Garcia, I know we started a little bit late today, so I don't want to keep you too long. It's Thanksgiving. We're coming up on Thanksgiving. What are some of the Thanksgiving traditions that you like to have with your family, and what are your plans for this upcoming Thanksgiving, where we're kind of still being quarantined and just trying to figure out some normality?
Well, usually we do it with our in-laws that live near us as well, and in the house, and we're kind of cozy inside with a nice Thanksgiving dinner with my brother and sister-in-law as well, as my in-laws. This year it'll be a little different. We kind of did an early Thanksgiving because the weather was a little better, because you never know what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
We'll do more of a low-key one this year, because obviously we can't really be in the house with my in-laws are a little bit older, even with masks on. So we're going to be really low-key, kind of following Inslee's recommendations. But yeah, traditions, I would like to do that stuff, do family get-togethers, do the sort of the standard turkey.
What's your go-to food?
We try to mix it up.
What has to be on Dr. Garcia's Thanksgiving table? You've got one thing, your wife knows. Say, no, we need to have it. We have to have it.
I'm going to do two.
Okay,
my mom's mashed potatoes and gravy.
Oh, baby,
is amazing. That's actually one of my birthday dinner choices too.
Oh, baby.
And the second one would be the stuffing. A well done, intricately made stuffing. There's certain things I can't even tell you what my mom did, but my wife does the same thing. But those are my two go-tos. I'm a sucker for that.
Oh, I love it. You're not going to believe this. This is the second time today I've had a conversation about mashed potatoes. Listen, I don't know what's going on with my life right now, but this has been the thriving conversation today. I think I had about a 20-minute conversation earlier with a buddy of mine about mashed potatoes, and it started with a hungry man TV dinner back from the 80s, but I digress. Anyway, movies, anything that you watch, the kids watch, it's Thanksgiving, or more football. Like what's your Thanksgiving day look like, outside of the delicious meal and hopefully some yummy sandwiches and leftovers later on?
I like football too, but it's hard with little kids to do too much football. So a little football, we'll actually kind of cheat early and do some Grinch. The kids like that. And then if there's anything good on TV or whatever, or Netflix or whatever, we'll do a movie. Just sort of hang inside, especially as usually the weather's not ideal. And always go for a little turkey trot. So that's important as well. So we'll kind of mix it up. This year will probably be more indoor stuff, and then kind of unfortunately avoiding family as much this year. But next year we'll be back to normal traditions, I hope.
I think so. I think we're going to be fine. I think we have to get through this. We personally like, I guess from now until the end of Christmas, we could probably watch Elf every night. Yeah. I don't know, that dumb movie just does it for us. We're always watching Elf, but when the kids were a little bit younger, we always liked the Charlie Brown stuff and all these other shows and movies and cartoons that kind of come on for the holidays. I can't believe that we're at the holidays already. It's been a long year. It's been a short year. It's been an average year. I don't know what kind of year it's been, but we're here. We've got the NBA draft happening. They go back to playing games at the end of December. We're a little bit more than a month away before they start up again, which is it's just absolutely mind-boggling. And hopefully everyone can stay safe. We've got a lot of closing going on. I got some friends back on the East Coast that said that they're shutting down the schools in New York, and New York is about to get shut down again because of this uptick with COVID. But everybody hang in there. We're going to be all right. We're getting through it. We've learned what to do, so we just all have to apply that knowledge that we've gained in the last few months in order to keep not so much ourselves safe, but the people around us. So if you could think of it like that, you're trying to keep the person next to you safe. Maybe more of us can be a little bit more thoughtful about that and do the right thing. So I digress there, Dr. Garcia.
Yeah, I agree with you too, so.
Dr. Grant Garcia, our orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist. Please check him out, grantgarciamd.com. He knows what he's doing. We're so thankful for him to spend some time with us and give us some of the key things to think about when you're drafting some players and what team doctors have to think about and consider as they go forward. Dr. Garcia, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. Happy Thanksgiving, buddy.
You too.
All right, bye. That is Dr. Grant H. Garcia. I mean, this man does it all. He has authored over 70 publications in prominent peer-reviewed journals. He's been in the American Journal of Sports Medicine, Journal of Shoulders and Elbow Surgery, and Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. I mean, he presented more than 60 academic sports papers worldwide. I don't know how he has the time to do it. I just don't understand. I've got to figure out time between, making coffee and trying to get breakfast and everything else is going on. He's got all of this going on, and his information and his plethora of knowledge is so important. And I'm glad that you could spend some time with us, and hopefully you had a great time and learn a few things. And we just want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving out there. And thanks for listening to NYC. We're talking sports and more from coast to coast. We're out.